Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Connecticut and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good few times before. Over the last couple of weeks I've had some really nice beers from this brewery, a good variety of different styles, and it seems that this brewery is very well rounded actually. Now, the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy, a style that's very special to me personally as well, because this was the one that really helped get me into craft beer, and it was a really quite random find actually, but when I saw it, I thought, you know, we really need to have a go at this one and just see what it's all about. So, yeah, needless to say, I'm very curious to try this beer. I think I tried this one actually on tap at the brewery, which was really nice as well, so I'm curious to do a kind of proper sit-down review of this one and dissect it properly and see how we go with it. So hopefully it's as good as I remember, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So, yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit north of me here in Hampden to Cheshire, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Counterweight Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Drudenhaus Rauchbier. It comes in at 5.8% ABV, and from the name of this one, you should know what style it is. But apparently this particular Rauchbier or smoke beer is brewed to be a Märzen style. So the Märzen is a sort of amber-coloured lager that originates in Germany. Originally these beers were brewed in March and they fermented for a longer period over the summer, which meant they were slightly higher in alcohol. So essentially the Märzen is a sort of slightly stronger amber-coloured German lager. So yeah, the reason I say this beer is special for me is because I really got into craft beer on the back of the Bamberg Rauchbiers, mainly Schlenkerla, but of course you've got Spezial and Weyer from the same area as well. So yeah, I do love my German smoked beers actually. So to find this one from one of Laura and Josh's local breweries was a little bit of a surprise, and yeah, nice to do a proper kind of sit down review of this one. So yeah, Drudenhaus Rauchbier, a 5.8% Märzen Rauchbier from Counterweight Brewing in Cheshire. Let's get started on this one and see what it's all about. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Counterweight Brewing Company so far, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, and you can of course go into the channel homepage and check out the other playlists as well, because there are playlists from lots of different countries. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again about Counterweight Brewing. So, Counterweight Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Cheshire in Connecticut, which is actually about halfway between New Haven to the south and the state capital Hartford, which is to the north, almost right in the middle of the state is Hartford. But the company was founded by Matt Westfall back in 2017. So during his time as an undergraduate student, he apparently spent a lot of time at Zock's Homebrewing and also at Willimantic Brewing Company, and this really got him fascinated with the idea of brewing beer. So at the time he was studying sociology, but he soon started studying a lot more about brewing, and eventually this just took over all of his time, and ultimately he ended up as the head brewer at New England Brewing Company, where he stayed for 9 years, and he was quite instrumental in helping this brewery become very well respected across the state. But he opted to start his own venture, and so in 1917 he founded Counterweight Brewing, and the brewery was originally based here in Hampden. So when they were operating here, they had a 3-vessel, 20-barrel or 3,200 litre brewing system, and they also operated a cool ship as well, one of the few breweries in the States, only 2 or 3 in the state at that time to operate it, and they had a number of fodders as well. But over the years, they've continued to expand their fermentation capacity. They've opened up a tap room on site as well, and eventually they just outgrew this first facility. So in the spring of 2022, they moved to a new facility a little bit further north in Cheshire, and they've got nearly 30,000 square feet of floor space there, and a new 4-vessel 30-barrel or 4,750 litre brewing system. And they've got an on-site tap room there as well, which has 2 bars, one on the top floor, one on the bottom floor. And they are kind of expanding. It's got some really nice kind of outdoor areas as well, and they do have a big room through to the side where they're going to do a lot of barrel aging and stuff like that. So exciting times ahead for this brewery, needless to say. But as of September 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 200 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. And my experience when I was there was that they had a number of different lager beers. They had some quite big lagering tanks in there, but they've also got some really nice IPAs and things like that too. We never really got to try too much in the way of darker beer from these guys, but I think it just isn't really the season for that. And they do seem to be brewing a lot of German-style lager, which is quite nice actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Counterweight Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So, just to let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one. I'm not sure exactly what this is meant to kind of signify. It just looks like it's a kind of flower pattern or something like that. The looks like daffodils or something. I'm really not 100% sure about that. But yeah, you can see on the front there is the Counterweight Brewing Company symbol. They've also got this one on the back here, which you'll see in quite a few different places. But yeah, this is a 473 milliliter can, this one, so 1 American pint, or 16 fluid freedom ounces as I like to call it. But yeah, 473 millilitres in the more sensible metric system. I always have to say that. I will make fun of America for their measurement system because it makes no sense. But yeah, on the back here it says, after a recent trip to Bamberg, we were inspired to brew a beer modelled after the wonderful Rauchbiers of Bamberg, Germany. Utilizing smoked malts made in Franconia, this beer is a celebration of brewing tradition and the spectrum of complex flavour that beer has to offer. Cheers. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. As I say, I did try this one at the brewery, and it is in my out and about video that I did, but to try the canned condition one should be interesting, and we'll just need to see how close this is, because in a beer style like this, what I do want is authenticity. But yeah, you have to remember, when you go to Bamberg, there are a few producers of Rauchbier. The most famous is, of course, Schlenkerla, and their beers, you know, when you try those, they will basically saturate your palate. They're beasts. But then you've also got the likes of Spezial and Weyer, who make like slightly lighter ones that aren't quite as saturating in terms of their flavour. But yeah, we'll get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. That should be nice. So, I think we've got enough in the glass to actually have a proper look at for the moment. So yeah, let's just have a wee look-see at this. So, yeah, you can see the colour of this one is kind of what you would expect of this style, actually. I think it's looking quite a little bit darker to you guys on the camera than it is to my naked eye, of course. But you can see the beer itself poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say, of kind of bumpy actually, I would say kind of fawn coloured head there. You can see that looks really nice. Kind of medium-sized bubbles on the top of the liquid there, a little bit more foamy the further up that you go. But yeah, you've got those kind of bigger, soapier bubbles toward the top of it. But yeah, this looks really quite nice actually. There are a few bits of sediment particle just kind of floating around in this one. Maybe we've had the fridge a little bit too cold, or it's been in the fridge just a little bit too long. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, I would describe this as being a lovely sort of rich stained mahogany colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour too. And when it comes to these Rauch beers, they do tend to be, you know, sort of chestnutty in colour. And as I say, this one's got a lovely kind of chestnutty colour to it. Quite, you know, you could say it's a dark copper as well, to be honest with you. But a lot of the colour in this one will be coming from the fact that it is A, a Märzen, and B, it's got the Bamberg Rauch malts in it. So that's something to just be aware of with this one. But yeah, certainly it looks the part. As I say, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there are some kind of sediment particles just floating around in this one, and if you put the light through it, you can see the little particulate matter there just suspended in the beer. But yeah, appearance-wise, I don't think there's anything too surprising about this one. So let's have a wee look at the aroma and just see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I'm very, very curious about this one. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty nice. It is, you know, what I'll say straight away, I always compare the Rauchbiers to, you know, Schlenkerla and some of the other ones. This one is a bit closer to Schlenkerla, but not quite as big as Schlenkerla. But it's also, it does have a little bit of the lighter thing that you would expect of, say, for example, like Spezial or Weyer. It has got a little bit of that, but it's maybe like 75%, 2/3 or 75% Schlenkerla, 33% like lighter. So and when I say Schlenkerla, I mean the Märzen, but generally speaking, as I say, Schlenkerla, I believe, use a bigger portion of Rauch malt in their malt bases when they're brewing. So that's absolutely worth bearing in mind with these beers. But yeah, aroma-wise, this is absolutely lovely, and it gives you everything you would expect of the style. As I say, this is a very special style for me because it is just so nostalgic. But yeah, let's just break this down and describe the aroma a little bit more in depth. So for me, the backbone of the beer, absolutely, you have that lovely kind of fresh, that sort of fresh, you know, kind of, would we say well fired maybe? You've got a bit of that kind of fresh hedgehog roll bread crust there, slightly well fired. You've definitely got a little bit of woodiness in there and a wee touch of nuttiness, but there's absolutely some lovely kind of rye bready notes coming out of this beer, absolutely. You've got rye bread, you've got pumpernickel type bread in there, and then within the bread you do get the nice kind of smokiness coming out of the beer. And, you know, if you compare German Rauch malt to, say, Scottish peated malt, German Rauch malt is almost quite kind of meaty. And the way that they make this malt is, of course, they smoke it by burning beechwood, basically. And, of course, you've also got the Eiche variety of Schlenkerla, which is oak. So there are a few ways to make this kind of malt. But, yeah, the beech malt is the most common one. The beech smoked malt is the mainstay. So yeah, because of that, you get this lovely mix of kind of like woodiness, and also like, you know, the kind of brown sort of Maillard kind of sugars and things. Is it a sugar? I can't remember. But basically, when you sear meat, you get that little bit of brown character with the fats when you sear them and things like that. It's like, I think you call it a Maillard or a Maillard reaction. I forget the exact name. But yeah, you get a little bit of that kind of meaty, porky, kind of seared meat type thing out of this one, and of course the beech malt in there, and that very much is embedded into the kind of bready aromas when it comes to the aroma. And quite often you'll get the same with the flavour as well. But above the bready notes, I think you start to get a little bit of you do start to get some more of the kind of brown sugary characters coming out of the beer. So for me, the brown sugary character, it has a little bit of toastiness to it. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a toastiness. Yeah, toasty brown sugar. There's a little bit of an almost slightly leathery character in there. And usually when you've got leatheriness, that's an indicator of a slightly longer wort boil. So yeah, there's a little touch of leatheriness in there. And then on top of that, yeah, so toasty brown sugar, a little bit of a leathery brown sugar, and maybe just in the middle of the nose, there's a very slight kind of sweet, straight up caramel in this one. You do get a little bit of nuttiness out of this beer, which is great. But overall, yeah, it's quite, it really is quite, yeah, quite smooth in a sense. I do like, as I say, I do like how that pieces together. Yeah, aroma-wise, that is really quite nice in that sense. So I think we've covered everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. So yeah, in terms of the maltiness and yeastiness, we can leave it at that. Let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer. And Märzens, of course, or lagers, they're not the most hot, especially the more malt-focused styles like this, are not the most hop-forward of beers, but you will still get a little bit of that out of it, and it's quite typical German noble character that you're getting out of this beer. So for me, it's there's a little bit of smooth earthiness in there. You've got a little touch of herbal character coming out of this one as well. And then, yeah, you've got a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character. You do have a nice little bit of that brighter floral aromaticity, which is kind of typical of your German noble hops. And you've also got a wee touch of brighter grassiness coming out of this one too, which I think is really nice. But yeah, these are all things that you would expect of the style. Now, when it comes to the fruitiness in this beer, there is a little bit of fruitiness in this one. Yeah, for me, the fruitiness, you have got this kind of big oily pear type note to it. There is a little touch of red fruity character in there, like a blackcurrant or a very slight fig or something like that. But yeah, big oily pear, little bit of dryness and stuff like that. And yeah, I think the way that this goes together from that perspective is really quite nice. Yeah, I like how this one goes together. I do like how that all pieces together. Aroma-wise, it is very nice. As I say, it's leaning more toward like a Schlenkerla type Rauchbier, but there are a few elements of the sort of Spezial and kind of Weyer type Rauchbier in there. So, as I always say, take a wee bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time for us to have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. We've still got a little bit left in the can. But yeah, let's get stuck into this one. So this one is the Drudenhaus 5.8% Rauchbier Märzen from Counterweight Brewing here in Connecticut. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost. That is really nice. Solid take on the style, I have to say that. I think the canned one's actually a bit more I think the canned one feels a little bit closer to what you'd find in Germany than the one Untappd did, to be honest with you, but that's just me. So yeah, flavour profile wise, this one is really very nice actually. Yeah, big thumbs up from me, and as I say, this is a style that's quite special to me and quite hard to impress me with, but you know, Counterweight are really damn solid when it comes to their lagers. You can't knock them, and we've had a good few of them actually. The Fest beer, this one, we did have another one, the name of that's gone right out of my head, but yeah, these guys are very solid in what they do, can't fault them in the slightest. But yeah, let's break this. Let's break the flavour of this beer down and just describe it a wee bit more in depth for you, as we always do. But yeah, really leans more toward that Schlenkerla end of the spectrum. So, yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, if we go to that middle third of the palate, you get that nice kind of roasty toasty backbone in there. So yeah, you've got that slightly, it's not too blackened if you like, but there is a roasty toasty well fired bread crust in there. That is the backbone of your beer. The further forward that you go on that middle third of your palate, you do get a nice bit of the dry beechwood kind of sitting in there, which is good. And yeah, there is a little slight nuttiness sitting on top of that too. And this is all just in the base layer with the bread crust and the wood and the kind of nutty character and stuff. So yeah, I like how that goes together. Yeah, for me that is really nice. Yeah, on top of the bread crusty character, you do start to get the nice. On top of the bread crusty character, you do get that lovely little bit of, I don't know if it's quite right to call it a rye bread, but there is, for me, above the bread crust, there is a little bit of a kind of more rye bready, bread crusty character in there. On top of that, you've got a more, you've got like a more dense kind of, like just a more dense and slightly more sweet, like German pumpernickel kind of brown bready character coming out of this one, which is lovely. And then the kind of smokiness that you're getting out of the beer is more embedded in that bready layer. It's kind of, it's like it's almost infused into the bread actually. So yeah, the lovely kind of brown bready characters that come out of this one are yeah, just the smokiness that you get in there. It's kind of like a sweet smoke actually, and as I say, a little bit just kind of meaty as well. That just feels as if it's embedded in this kind of sweeter, like German pumpernickel type bread actually, and that's really nice. The further into the aftertaste you go, of course, in that middle third of the palate, you get more of the wood, you get a little bit more of the kind of nutty character and the kind of meatiness, the dry meatiness from the beech smoke lingers there too. But yeah, above the kind of brown bread, you get the yeah, above the kind of brown bready character, you get a little bit more of that. You do get more of the kind of roasty toasty brown sugar. There is a little bit of that kind of roasty toasty brown sugar in there. Yeah, so above the kind of wholemeal brown bread, yeah, you've got that roasty toasty kind of sweeter brown sugar in there. There is like a kind of circle in the middle of your palate where the brown sugar feels as if it's a little bit more kind of leathery, which I think is really nice. And then yeah, on top of that you have this on top of that you have this more roasty toasty brown sugar, the more leathery circle, and then right in the dead centre of your palate you do get a very slight hint of like a sweet caramel. It's definitely not treacle or molasses or anything like that, it is more like a kind of straight up sweet caramel actually. And then as you go out toward the edges of your palate, on top of these brown sugars, there's a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit or cookie, as the Americans would say, coming out of this one. So yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, so in terms of the middle third of your palate, I think we've said everything we really need to say there. So let's go to the back third of the palate then. So remember, generally speaking, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more kind of dry and bitter flavours come out further back. And the back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, they just come out at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of brown bready character, and they're like a sweeter kind of rye bread in the base, then you get the pumpernickel bread further up. But then yeah, on the base of that back third of the palate, you've got the toasty, kind of slightly well-fired bread crust in there. On top of that, you get the rye bready character, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. Then you've got the sweet pumpernickel bread above that, which feels a lot lighter and more airy. You do get a little bit more smoke out of it on the back third of the palate too, but it does feel kind of dry and not quite as sweet, for sure. And so yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, I do like how the beer goes together in that sense. So yeah, above everything else on that back third of the palate, you can feel some of the kind of more toasty and dry brown sugars just creeping over the top of that. But then yeah, you have above that you can feel the more kind of yeasty character coming out of this beer. So yeah, you can feel the yeastiness in there, and the yeastiness is like this dense, sweet, kind of almost rye bready character. It's kind of wrapped in a sort of toasty, bread crusty layer. It's got a little bit of an almost kind of spicy note to it as well, but definitely that sits on top of the back third of your palate, and you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So that's quite interesting in this beer, I would say. But yeah. So yeah, for me, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of things. So we can move on to the hoppy side of the beer. So the back corners of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit of earthiness in there. The earthiness is a little bit stronger in this, and I think that's just because of the presence of the smoky malts. But as you move further forward, you get a little bit of a kind of herbally, woody character, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you get more of the kind of floral aromaticity of this one. It has a very slight spicy character to it, this one, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more grassy, but kind of a wet grassiness, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think that covers the green component. Let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer, just to round off the flavours. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there, and a kind of, yeah, the kind of rye bready character in the base, and the sort of pumpernickel-y bread on top of that. The base of that front third of your palate, you have a really nice, you've got the kind of toasty bread crust, the woodiness in there again, then the rye, the sort of rye and wholemeal brown bread, then you've got that nice oily bubble. You've got that nice oily bubble in there where the fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me, it's interesting at the back of that front third of your palate, there is like a teeny little tiny hint of like plum or something. That's very minimal, but yeah, it's like a dry kind of datey character. It's maybe more of like it's almost like a Japanese ume plum actually, the kind of dry plums, or prune maybe. There's maybe like a very slight hint of like prune at the back of that front third of your palate, and a bit of date underneath. As you move further forward, you start to get this more oily kind of peary character. There's a very slight hint of fig, and then as you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue, it's more of like a black currant sort of note that you get out of this one. But yeah, I do like how that all pieces together. The fruity side of this beer is really, really nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, and it just adds a bit more depth to the beer, of course. But obviously the focus in a Rauchbier is on the malts and these kind of smoky characteristics. So I think at this point we should move on and have a wee look at the mouthfeel just to round off this review. So yeah, for me, the mouthfeel, I feel this one's quite mid-bodied. It is actually quite thick for a lager, this beer. And that is one of the things I would say where this differs. The flavour profile is very authentic. I will say that for this one. And you quite often find this. I've said this in many American lager reviews before. I think the American palate is a bit sweeter than the European palate, and you quite often find that American lagers are just that bit sweeter and wetter as well than the actual German ones are. Probably just water profiles and so on, and the American palate being sweeter, but it's always interesting to note these little differences. So yeah, for me, it's quite an oily mouthfeel, this one, and that's why I say it's one of the heavier lagers I've come across in recent times. It's almost at Doppelbock level mouthfeel, this one, so I would say, yeah, mid-bodied, straight in the middle of the spectrum, smooth carbonation, a mix of oily character and silky character coming out of this one. Carbonation is smooth. In terms of the IBU count, you'd have to talk about perceived bitterness versus calculated bitterness here again, because the smokiness gives the beer quite a little bit of like dryness, which you could perceive as bitterness, Whereas, you know, in terms of IBU from the hops and things like that, this beer is probably only meant to be like 20 or 25 IBUs, but I think it could be perceived as more because of that dryness I mentioned. But yeah, the malty character in this one, you've got a bit of dryness underneath and a bit of toastiness there, smooth bready character, and a bit of kind of dry sweetness on top. The smokiness, of course, lingers into the aftertaste and it gives you more dryness again. And you've got this lovely little bit of kind of oily, fruity character to the beer. But overall, I think this one is really, really nice. And it gets a big thumbs up from me. I have enjoyed trying this one, actually. So, yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This has been a really interesting one to try. So, yeah, this is the Drudenhaus, a 5.8% Rauchbier Märzen, from Counterweight Brewing Company in Cheshire here in Connecticut, who are very solid on their lagers, and this is one that you don't find all that often. I'd love to try a few more from them actually, so if I do end up moving to Connecticut at some point, at least I know I've got a good lager brewery in the state that I can go to. But there are a few actually, I will say. I say at least I know I've got one, but I have encountered a few. The quality of lagers here in Connecticut is pretty damn good. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Counterweight Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Sláinte, Skål, cheers, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon. Make sure you check out Counterweight Brewing, check out my social media, check out theirs, and we'll see you in another video a little bit later on.